welcome back in. This is season 6, episode number 45 of the Outlap F1 podcast. And if you wanted to know where we were going, this is where we were. One of these days I'm going to nail that button. Just not today. But anyway, it's our 2024 Las Vegas GP review show. You've got Andy, and I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just wrapped up talking about, amazingly, even though there was on-track drama, there wasn't as much off-track stuff. We had no manhole covers things. All the practices went to time. The massive feat of engineering went all right. No huge dramas that way. This is a very good thing. They pulled it off. They pulled it off a lot better. Much easier production this year. It's the 2024 Las Vegas GP, and we just wrapped up our discussion of the race itself. And now we're going to take a look at where the points are after this round. We have crowned the driver's champion, and that is Max Verstappen. So, Cody, why don't you break down where everybody sits right now in the drivers, and I will break down the fascinating and still up for grabs in a lot of places constructor standings.
So, Max Verstappen is in first place, and it is official. He is not going anywhere this season. Max Verstappen is crowned driver's champion of the world. He is in first and going nowhere with Red Bull, and he currently stands at 403 points. In second place, Lando Norris, unfortunately not taking the driver's championship battle any further, but still in a very respectable P2 in the championship for McLaren. He sits at 340 points. Charles Leclerc gives a decent haul of points from finishing fourth this weekend. He's in third in the points for Ferrari and is at 319 points. Oscar Piastri, not the greatest performance from him this weekend. He didn't do himself any favors with that penalty that he earned right at the start of the race for his grid slot position. But he is still in fourth place in the points for McLaren at 268 points. Only a little bit ahead of Carlos Sainz at this point. Carlos Sainz managed to get a podium this race. He's in fifth place in the points for Ferrari at 259 points. So only 9 points behind Piastri at this point. There is still positions to play for in the drivers' standings. George Russell, biggest haul of points this weekend from his outstanding performance for Mercedes. He's in sixth place at 217 points, and that opens up the gap to his teammate Lewis Hamilton just a tiny bit. Lewis is in seventh in the points, and the other Mercedes at 208 points. So still a battle for bragging rights between the two Mercedes drivers. Sergio Perez managed to score a single point this race. He is in eighth place in the other Red Bull at 152 points. So I'm not even sure mathematically he can change his position at this point. I think he's locked into eighth, which, considering his teammate is the driver's champion, is honestly a little sad. Fernando Alonso, no points this weekend for him, but he is still holding on to ninth place in the driver's standings for Aston Martin at 62 points. And come to think of it, I think actually we now have 4 races in a row where Aston Martin has not scored any points in the weekend. So, I'm sure you're going to discuss it in the drivers or in the constructors standings. It's a good thing that they're pretty locked into their position because they've had a rough go of late. But as I said, Fernando Alonso holding on to ninth place at 62 points. And then 10th, which is still to play for, is currently held by Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas at 35 points.
Yeah, that we've mentioned it many times. The 10th place in the drivers is something that is going to get, I don't know if it matters to any of them, but it's going to get spicy between them.
It'll matter. If I was a driver, even if it wasn't for money or anything, it would matter to me. So it definitely matters to them.
Yeah. Pride still does matter to these guys, absolutely, for sure. But where the money matters is the constructor standings, and it's gotten tight almost across the board. Only a couple positions are pretty locked in. Only really one that I can guarantee at this stage. But P1 is McLaren Mercedes. They maintain a lead in the constructors after this round. It is less. They are up to 608 points on the season. Second place, Decreasing the lead down to 24 points is Ferrari. They check in with 584 points. In third place, Max Verstappen is the driver's champion. Red Bull are probably not going to be constructors' champions unless they get a turn of luck in these last two rounds. They are fairly adrift now of P1 in the constructors, but they can check in with 555 points for them. P4, this is the one position I can tell you with absolute certainty. This is where Mercedes will finish P4 in the constructors. Despite their great showing here, they are up to 425 points, but they cannot catch or be caught by anybody at this stage. P5, Aston Martin, as you mentioned, Cody, did not record a point. They remain on 86, but that is still 36 points to the good of P6, which is now inhabited by Haas Ferrari. They check in with 50 points, so they have retaken P6 in the constructors after this round. P7 is the Alpine team, still riding high after the double podium in Brazil. Only a scant point between them and Haas. That fight is not over by a long shot. So they are on 49 points. And right on their heels is the VCARB team, thanks to Yuki Tsunoda's good showing here. They check in now with 46 points. P9, can someone keep a car together? At least they leave Vegas with two cars that were together. Williams, Mercedes, my God, please no more crashes for them until the end of the season. I'm just seriously, just as a neutral fan, don't really care. I just want to see them get out of this season, man, because they've done enough work. I think they could have reconstructed. They could have built 5 different cars by now at this stage. They probably already have, but they check in. P9 is probably where they're going to finish. They will more than likely finish there. They check in with 17 points. And despite the one of the better efforts from Zhao Guanyu this weekend, it was not enough to get Kick Sauber off of the duck. They remain in P10 with 0 points. All right. Well, you've heard our takes on the Las Vegas GP. It is now time to open it up to your takes on what you saw this weekend. It's the fan email segment. We've got our normal contributors here in the dock as always. Cody, what do our contributors have to say?
All right. Our first fan email comes from Rachel Fleming. Thank you, Rachel. And she says, okay, Max Verstappen wins the title. Well done. Now to the important events. My man wins. George was brilliant all weekend and he dominated this race. Personally, I think he gets a lot of hate from the F1 community for no good reason. For me, George is my favorite driver on the grid. Always liked him ever since he was in that awful Williams in 2019. Perez watch. Q1 exit, so getting to 10th is okay. Going out in Q1 is still the main headline. And he got beat by Yuki, but that double overtake was very good. A great race by Nico Hülkenberg again, really showing off his talent. Shame he was never given the chance of a top drive. Gutted for Gasly after doing so well in quali. Alpine letting him down again. As for Ocon, that was a pure rookie mistake in the pit lane. Silly from him. Special shout out to the RB livery, though I thought it looked really, really good. It reminded me of the 1997 Sauber, which is not a bad thing at all. And finally, Sauber watch. Joe did a brilliant race and was up to 9th at one point, but still finished 14th. Impressive from him this weekend. Such a shame my tweet didn't quite work. And then she goes on to say, I just did a massive disrespect of Joe. He was 13th. Yes, thank you, Rachel. Lots of good points there. One thing that we didn't really talk about earlier was the bit from Ocon there. So Ocon did have that moment where he went into the pits. He did not bail like Carlos Sainz did, but his team was also not out and ready. So at that time, Ocon was already in the pit lane. He had a choice to make. His options were to just drive through the pit lane and effectively give himself a drive-through penalty, or pull into the pit box and just wait for the team. I think he was kind of damned either way, but he ended up just passing straight through the pit lane and went back out on the track. Gosh, I don't really know where the order of events happened there, if the team called him in by mistake or if he misunderstood a call to the pits or what. I definitely feel like it's on the team that they weren't out there and ready. I mean, something wasn't communicated with the pit confirm or whatnot. I think it might have ended up a little better in Ocon's favor, and the commentators thought so as well. And that it would have been a little better if he had actually just stopped in the pit box. I think he would have probably lost less time pulling into the pit box and just wait for the team to get out there to do their stuff than come down pretty much for a drive-through penalty and then have to come in again. But I guess I don't know for sure. Either way, he wasn't in a position really to score points, so it was just kind of a little bit of a goofy situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we did not get a chance to talk about it, and my apologies for not even noting it until I saw this. I went, "Oh yeah, that happened too." It kind of was a situation where Alpine, because they where they are in last year's constructors standings, were one of the first pit stalls on the pit lane, so they did not have as much time as you would have if you were, say, Red Bull or Mercedes or even Aston Martin, where you could go down halfway down the pit lane, be hitting the pit confirm button on the steering wheel, which should light something within the garage up that says that there's a car there, and alert the crew to get up and get a set of tires ready because the guy's about to be here. Whatever the failure was, yeah, Ocon made the decision either because he had to or because there was literally nobody there. But he goes through the pit lane. It is basically like a self-assessed drive-through penalty, and then has to come around again, for the pit stop. So, yeah, just kind of a weird situation. Not something you generally see. We've seen sometimes where the crew isn't necessarily ready for the stop, but usually you would stop and just kind of let it happen because, yeah, it's probably less painful than what ended up happening there. But yeah, I mean, to Rachel's other points, I'm glad you're a George fan. George, in the world of F1 social media, I'm convinced that everybody gets hate thrown at them and everybody gets love thrown at them from other people. So it just kind of is what it is. And when you're looking for it, you're going to find it. You're either going to find the hate or you're going to find the likers of it. So it's just kind of the way that those things work, unfortunately, in the world of F1 social media, whether it's Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. It's all around. To your point on Perez watch, is probably a better race for him than what he's definitely been doing in the past. So he does get a point. But you got to remember, this guy finished on the podium last year. So, at the same place in a track that should suit him, being a street track, being, less grippy conditions, as close to Baku as you could get without being Baku. And it just didn't work for him, especially in qualifying here. I'm with you about Nico Hulkenberg. Gonna be interesting to see kind of how that Audi situation comes in and what they do. Mattia Binotto is going to be there. They're going to have obviously Gabriel Bortoleto in the other seat. So Nico Hulkenberg is going to be the chance to be the mentor to that kid, and if he can set him up right and they can get the engineering side right, and there's nothing to say that Mattia Binotto is not a great engineer. He definitely is. If he can put together a team, maybe we get somewhere by the time he's done. So we'll have to see. If you are a fan of the resurgent Alpine, this was a very frustrating race, especially after the strong qualifying. And Gasly was doing the thing, and looked like he was going to be fine, and then the engine just died out on him. And it's notable because we don't see it anymore. One of the things that I think you're going to see when you get to 2026 is you will see engine attrition come back because we haven't had so many years of just being able to work on reliability like we've had with these engines. These are by far the most reliable set of engines, whether they're normally aspirated or whether they're hybrids or whether they're fully electric. You don't see engine reliability like this, and you're probably never going to ever see it again. So to see that when something does fail, it's notable and it's significant. I did like the V-Carb livery. I agree with you. I think it does harken back to a 97-esque Sauber, which was pretty cool. And I enjoyed the even the sparklies that was on there. I thought it looked good under the lights. We had our little thing with Sauber Watch. We were trying to manifest a Sauber 1-2, which I would have been all there for. Unfortunately, our combined tweet powers and our belief in the Kicksauer team did not manifest, but it did get a good result. I think for them overall, 13th is definitely better than what they.
Last little point on the George hate. I agree with you that if you go looking for it, you're going to find both love and hate for any driver on the grid. I like George. I think he gets a lot of flack for maybe the perception that he's dropped some opportunities here and there, but all drivers have. I personally really like George. I think he's got a great personality. He is iconically British, which I think is a good thing. I think he leans into that now too, and I think a lot of people forget that he is up against Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest of all time in the sport. And in the 3 seasons that they've driven with each other at the same team, we're looking like it's possible that George could beat him 2 out of 3. So that is, nothing to sneeze at. He is very talented, and I think, if they can just get that Mercedes dialed in so it's more consistent, I think we have a good chance of seeing him win more races next year. All right. Thank you, Rachel, again for your email. Our next one comes from Dave Doherty. Thank you, Dave. And he says, "Hi, team. Viva Las Vegas. I'm very happy and surprised that Mercedes had this weekend on top form. It was brilliant. And Verstappen is the champ of the world." Yes. I kind of like being called Team Viva Las Vegas. We will actually be Team Viva Las Vegas again in a couple weeks' time here, which I'm very excited for. But yes, I am also very happy and very, very surprised that Mercedes was the cream of the crop this weekend. It seems to kind of come out of nowhere for them. These strange track conditions here, though, kind of made me think it was maybe possible because this was going to be one of the coldest races on the calendar, which is, in my opinion, kind of ironic because Las Vegas is in the desert, but it does get, I guess, cool there at night this time of year, and that just played into the Mercedes form, as you were talking about, the stupid downforce when we were talking a little bit ago, that just plays into what their car has. And it was very good to see. Since their car has not been in very good form this year, when they do get these moments, they're very excited and ecstatic. George is only 3 official wins to his name at this point. I really feel like it should be 4. But every time he wins, he is elated and very excited, and it's great to hear that over the radio. It was great to see Lewis Hamilton get that win at Great Britain earlier this year. So yes, I'm happy to see them win, which is really funny because a few years ago I wouldn't have been happy to see Mercedes win. I would have been bored to tears and been like, oh yeah, another one to extend Lewis's record, goodie. But no, this time around, it is good to see.
Yeah, and I suddenly became. I mean, Zach Brown even mentioned it in one of the interviews during the race, where he's like, "I'm going to suddenly become a Mercedes fan and go Lewis." And I was like, "Yes, indeed." Once he got past both Lando and Oscar, I said, "Go get the Ferraris, please. Go get the Ferraris." And Lewis, to his credit, managed to pull it off. So limited, thank God. Like I said before, thank God for that, because otherwise. If Ferrari had pulled off a 1-2 here with a 6th and 7th, the math didn't look all that great. But we go from here to Qatar. I've even heard Sainz on a couple interviews said that they don't think they're going to be as good in Qatar as they certainly were here. So we'll have to see. I mean, again, you never. Here's the thing: these cars are in such this narrow working window, and if you're a Mercedes fan, and I know Dave definitely is a big Mercedes guy. But the thing that you take from a performance like this, yeah, it's probably not sustainable this season, but they're not that far off. They're really, truly not that far off. It's just a couple things. You just got to figure out how to get the window a little bit more open so that you can compete throughout the course of the season, because once you're there, you guys, they haven't forgotten how to execute. So they are still one of the best run organizations up and down the paddock. And when you give those guys a sniff, look what they did. So harbinger possibly of things to come. We'll have to see. Going to be a big deal. The build between the end of this season and next year is significant. That's why you still see people bringing upgrades in the third to last race of the season, because they're still trying to get this stuff all lined up for next year, because it's such a big change coming for 2026.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you again, Dave, for your email. Our last one comes in from the Formula. Thank you, Mr. Formula. And he says, WTF, Mercedes, or if we're going to be Charles Leclerc, what the fuck, Mercedes? What an inconsistent car, but it sure showed its potential this weekend. Also, color me stupid, after watching F1 for years, I just this weekend realized that they show a faint graphic in the bottom right corner showing what turn each individual camera cut is covering. Has this always been the case? And has this always been the case, and was I just oblivious? Honestly, I don't think you are that oblivious, because until reading this, I did not realize that either. So now I've got something new to look for on the broadcast. That's actually really cool, and it kind of probably helps to follow where things are going on. No, I'm not oblivious at all, or either that, or we're both oblivious.
So this started back slightly after the Liberty made the acquisition, and even before they changed the logo and they did all kind of that stuff. They put in some subtle things. I don't know. I'm trying to remember the year. I want to say it was 13 or 14, but there was a year at COTA where instead of what they did was they put little pylons at each of the turns that would say turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. And one, nobody liked shipping them all over the world, and two, they could easily get destroyed if somebody went off. So that lasted a couple of races, and they tried it out. And they decided ultimately not to do it. So then they went to the one in the graphic. When they redid the graphics, when Liberty came in and kind of re-established the graphics away from the old F1 logo, and they made the logo with kind of the, your that black tree that you see in the corner, they would identify the turns. They don't do it all the time. But it does come up at different points throughout practices, especially if they're on a run with a car, you'll see it pop up. If they're trying to stay with something throughout a battle, throughout the course of the lap, you'll see it come up as well to try to tell you where it is. And it was kind of an evolution of it. It started as a physical sign, and then they went virtual and they just made it a graphic. So it's been around, I think, since around 2013 or 2014 in some fashion. I know under the old regime, they didn't do any of it. The old regime did none of that. So what they've never done is they've never changed the numbers into a corner name or something like that, because the same corner could be named something different depending on what country is doing the broadcasting.
The old regime would probably curled up their nose and said, if you were an F1 fan, you would know it.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, I for one think it's a good graphic, and we'll be looking out for it in the future.
Yeah, well, no, and it's good to call that kind of stuff out, because it's subtle, and that's what they were trying to do with it. I know too, was they were trying to make it so that it would inform but not dominate. They were not trying to take anything away. So it's a fine line when you're trying to bring new fans in, and this is obviously Liberty's big push to try to bring as many new fans in is this race and this weekend. So I'm not surprised that that's there, and it's just another way to try to explain it. Now, I was also glad that we didn't get yet another explanation of the DRS. So that, to me, as an experienced fan, is a good thing.
Yes. All right. Thank you guys very much for your emails. We always look forward to them. We enjoy the dialogue with you guys.
Yep. Yes. Totally echo that statement as well. Thank you so much for contributing. Good thoughts here across the board, as always. We come to expect it, and we love it. Mm-hmm. All right. So we will move into our awards, and we shall start with the rubbish. Cody, what goes in the bin for you this weekend?
I'm going to keep driving this point home until he is not officially in the seat. Out of the 8 drivers that drive for teams that have won races this season, Red Bull, Max is the driver's champion. And Sergio Perez is last out of those 8 drivers. I think that's enough said. I think Perez used to have it. I think he was a really good driver. I think he is still a decent driver. We saw a flash of it this weekend with that amazing double overtake. That was really cool stuff. But I don't think he's got it for the Red Bull team now. I think it's time to give that seat to someone else and see what they can do with it.
Fair enough point. Yeah, and we'll watch and see if anything happens. Nothing has happened yet, and if it hadn't happened yet, he's going to make it to the end of the season because they're just going to run out of races. But yeah, it's definitely something to watch for sure in the off season. My rubbish, I didn't really have a whole lot that kind of annoyed me, but I think the timing of this 11th team, and it's just it part of me is very happy, obviously, that we're going to get there. The Andretti staff, all of those things. We're going to see a U.S.-based team. Cadillac GM is a big deal. You're going to have GM going at Ford, going at Ferrari, going at all these manufacturers. So all that, I think, is very good. It just kind of sucks that this is kind of how we had to get here. And it's just the whole process of how we ended up here just strikes me as petty. Everybody was taking backhanded slaps at each other throughout the course of it, whether it was Michael Andretti being overly brash or Greg Maffei famously saying, "Not in my lifetime are you ever going to make it to the F1 grid." It just throws all of the easy tropes that the sport is trying to avoid right out in front of everybody to take advantage of. And, I'm a big fan of this sport. That's why I'm sitting here talking about it, because I love it. And I get up at strange, weird hours and stay up at crazy hours to watch this stuff. And I want it to do well. And it just, when people are being stupid for petty reasons, it just annoyed me. And, I'm glad that this is the end of the saga. At least, if nothing else, the saga will finally come to an end. We'll get our 11th team, and I'll be happy for that. But in the minute, it's just the process sucked. But let's hope we do better. All right, so we will move to analysis paralysis. For a minute, I had a hard time with this one. I may change this on the fly, but Cody, I'll let you go first. What you got?
All right, so I had put down just Ferrari for this. After discussing it, I'm now going to extend that to Ferrari and Alpine for pit lane weirdness. This race, we had not one but 2 teams that were not ready for their drivers when they were coming into the pits, and all I could think of was, "You're a pit crew. It's what you do. Why are you not ready? You literally only have to be ready twice, maybe 3 times, for most Grand Prix. Sometimes once if you're lucky." And yeah, the fact that we saw 2 pit crews that were not ready for their drivers was very weird. Definitely some balls dropped there on both teams' parts. So they're going to take my analysis paralysis award.
Yeah, definitely fair enough. So I started this out by saying the Alonso move to start with soft tires, I got it, but it clearly didn't work. And I think he got off of those tires after like 4 laps or something like that. So it ended up being a very, very cringy moment. Now, to Alonso's credit, his other stints were obviously a lot better, and he came home P11, which is just outside the point. So obviously it didn't super hinder him, but what could have been, had they just started him on the medium along with everybody else, and if he pits and he manages to do what he does, being the great driver that he is, maybe Aston score a point. So it kind of felt like a bit of an own goal there. The other one that I was going to give on the fly is to all the pit stop stuff. I agree with you, Cody. That's just weird. I mean, there's a pit confirm button that most drivers are hitting as they're coming around a corner to alert these guys, and if it's set up right, a big klaxon alarm almost goes off that says, "Hey, somebody's coming down the pit lane." And to see it with signs, at least they aborted it. But to see the Ocon one where you look off to the left, there's nobody there. Yeah, it's just something you just don't see. So yeah, that is kind of the definition of analysis paralysis because somebody didn't analyze and then they all got paralyzed. All right, so we will move into our dark horse of the day. I'll go first with this one, and I've got a couple reasons I want to give this one out. One, for Haas for striking back in this constructor battle, because I thought they've been doing well, and two, for Nico Hulkenberg for proving me right when we talk about predictions. So Haas and Hulkenberg get my award for dark horse for doing what they had to do to retake P6 in the constructors. Is that battle done? Hell no, it's going to go all the way to the last turn of the wheel, I think, in Abu Dhabi before we're going to find out who takes that P6 in the constructors. But good going, Haas. Nice way to fight back after the shocker of Brazil.
Mm-hmm. All right, my dark horse award, I was going to give it to Mercedes for getting the 1-2 finish out of nowhere, but after thinking about it, they are still Mercedes, so I'm not sure they're a dark enough horse for the dark horse award. So I'm actually going to give this one to Pierre Gasly for his wild qualifying performance, where he managed to get into P3 in an Alpine that we at the beginning of the season we're constantly teasing for being absolutely awful back of the grid, and he made it happen. So there's got to be something in the water where Gasly lives or something right now, because these last couple of race weekends he's really shown some very strong pace.
And it might just be that, Pierre Gasly's got some real good talent, and he just has been having some crappy cars the last couple of years. So, we'll that's what I hope it is. I really do hope so. Because I remember, when he won that freak race in Monza a few years ago, you thought that maybe this was the start of something really good for that guy. And he just couldn't get himself in elite drive, trying to get back to, that Red Bull second seat. It was clear that Helmut Marko was just not going to have it. So where he goes, and if he can build something with this group, he's obviously their number one moving forward. So he's got to have a rookie teammate next year. And he's going to have the opportunity to try to build that team around him, which is, I think, very important. So well done to Pierre Gasly for his recent form, despite not converting it in the race. But you can't do anything about that when your engine decides to say no more. All right, so we'll move into our driver of the day. I think we have some consensus here. I'll go first with this one. George Russell, man, from the first practice to the end of the weekend, a just tremendous in control all weekend long. That Mercedes they found the window. Whatever the window was, they certainly found it. They stayed within it. They never really faded. The field got close to him in some of the practices, but at the end of the day, when George decided to push, the car reacted, and he did a great job, I thought, throughout the course of the not only securing the win, but doing it pretty drama-free.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree completely. For me, Max Verstappen is the driver of the season, and he is now officially driver of the season, and that makes me very happy. But as far as this one race day, Max Verstappen only did what he needed to do to clinch the title. He played it pretty safe, brought it home to a 5th place. So I don't think you can argue that the driver of the day here was George Russell. Driver of the weekend really seemed to be in control through all sessions, and managed the race very, very well. As I said earlier, I don't even think when Lewis was catching him that it was really going to turn into a battle. I think he was just holding back for when he needed it. So, yep, George Russell, driver of the day.
Yep, agreement there. And I also put in my thing for Max for winning the championship, doing what he needed to do. I actually thought just the course of this weekend was one of his more talent-filled weekends. Everybody's going to look at Brazil and they're going to, wow at what he did in the wet. And you should admire and wow at that. But here was a weekend that didn't look like it was going right. FP2, he was in 17th place. No pace on the medium tires, no race pace in the long runs. And then they got it together in FP3 and in qualifying to get it up there, and they kept it there, which is not an easy feat. So I think on a track that, was very challenging for a lot of people, I thought Max did extremely well under some harder conditions too, and did what he needed to do to win the drivers this weekend. So good on you for that. So I tip my cap to Max Verstappen this season. I don't know that we ever thought I don't know that I ever said it was really a fight for the drivers, but we kind of got where we got. But he did the job for sure in the early part of the season, and then when the pressure kind of ramped up, he showed true in Brazil and in here. All right. So we will now have to talk a little bit about predictions, which of course went right out the window when Mercedes decided to show up. So yeah, there goes our podium, gone. The only things we got were the lap times and the prop bet. The prop bet saves us. So Cody, you get 2 points. You did get the qualifying lap time. Your qualifying lap time was actually very, very respectable, only a tenth or two off the actual with the one, I think you were 132, low 132, and that was pretty close to what it was. You had a 132.1, and I think the actual pole time was a 132.3. So that's only 0.2 difference. So that's that's damn respectable right there. But you got the other point for saying yes to the prop bet. Somebody from Team USA scored a point, but you did not get who scored that point. I did. So I got 3 points. I got the overall fastest lap time thanks to the fastest lap of the day that was actually set at the end by Lando Norris because he was kind of on his own. Did throw on the set of softs, did go out and get that extra point, so that could come back and be significant for McLaren there. I get a point for saying yes, Team USA will score a point, and I got the prop bet driver because I said Nico Hulkenberg was going to be the highest Team USA scorer, and that's what basically does it for me. So I take it 3-2 on the weekend. I promise for Abu Dhabi, I'm going to have where we are going into it, so we know. I'm going to tally all of the weekends. I got to go through all of these and tally them up and see where we're at.
I think it's actually pretty close at this point.
Yeah, I mean, my wins are there. They're not huge points scoring wins, but a win is a win is a win is a win, I guess. Mm-hmm. So there we go. All right. So as we wrap up, we go from the cold desert of Las Vegas to a very warm desert of Qatar. We had to move this race back on the calendar. It used to be in mid-October. We're now doing it at the end of November because it was so damned hot last year. We had mandatory tire pit stops last time out. Let's hope for none of the above. Let's hope we have a normal service resumed race on tap in Qatar on a track that looks generally pretty suited to MotoGP bikes, but we're going to race F1 cars around here. But Cody, any thoughts as we go from the cold desert to the warm desert?
Yeah, last year's race was a bit of a doozy with how hot it was to the point of maybe even getting a little bit dangerous for the drivers. Definitely too hard on the tires with the mandatory stops, which I thought was made for a pretty boring race because you knew when everyone was going to be hitting. So I'm hoping we don't have to do that again this year. I'm hoping that pushing it back about a month and a half is enough to help alleviate the temperatures. I think probably because of where Qatar is in the world, I'm not sure it's ever actually not hot in Qatar, but hopefully it's a little less hot.
Yeah, fully agree with you there. But as we ramp up for that weekend, we will be back on later on this week for a Qatari GP preview. We do have a little thing called a holiday on Thursday, so we'll have to see when we actually can push that out. But we're going to do our best to try to do that to get you ramped and ready to go. This constructors fight across the board is anywhere but finished. There are lots of stories and lots of things to be settled out in both the drivers and the constructors, despite the fact that Max Verstappen has wrapped up the drivers' championship. So we're going to be here to cover all of it. And we got 2 races to go. I think they're going to be a hell of a lot of fun, and they're going to be interesting watches. So we'll be here all the way for it. So for Cody, it's been Andy. Enjoy your holiday week in the U.S. if you are, and if you're not, get ready for a Qatari preview and a Qatari race next weekend. So may all your laps be fast.